This is the Augusto Digital Insights Podcast, and I'm your host, Brian Anderson. In part 2, we're going to focus on our learnings as engineers and as product developers and the things that we're excited about in the future for Augusto. Let's jump in. Well, let's talk a little bit about the Augusto story, because that's all that, like, now we've made it to Augusto, right? I worked at OST. I was growing an app dev team there, and then and doing a lot of business development work for OST. And then I was also had this Pay It Square thing that was like a product inside of OST. And so I had a lot going on there, and I ended up fizzling out there, got fired, and which is a different interview. But that is one of the reasons that I started Augusto was the best thing that ever happened to me, because I realized, like, okay, I have enough knowledge now. I'm an entrepreneur at heart. I need to go like do my own thing. And that's when, like, I called you and Jim, and I invited you up to the cottage, because I had a cottage up on Little Whitefish Lake north of Grand Rapids, which was a great spot. And we had our boat in the water. And I think I took you for a boat ride, and I dropped the anchor and wouldn't let you guys get off. I think that's how the story goes.
I think pretty much you said, like, you're either swimming to shore or we're leaving this boat with a deal to start a new company. And you've been talking to me about it before, and I've been interested. Like, yeah, this is something I've talked about in sort of my time there. I loved what I was doing there, but I was ready to try something new. So I wasn't feeling necessarily as pushed as I'd like to be. Like, doing something new, that was one of the draws, like I said, of consulting, was doing something new. And so this coming into Augusto was completely brand new. Like, everything, sometimes I still feel like every day I'm doing something I've never done before.
Yeah.
That was one of the big appealing things about that. Plus, just getting back to work with you and Jim, and then eventually Marty. Like, I've had this company described to me. It's like, it feels like it's 4 guys who said, if I ever start my own business, this is how I'm going to do it. And that's what we've done.
Right. Yeah. Cause it's like based off of so many lessons learned. And seeing so many different scenarios through consulting and through, doing it ourselves, that we kind of like, we're able to see above it and say, like, if we're going to do this, how would we want to do it? And like, there's still tons to learn every day. I actually love to learn, so it's like, I'm constantly soaking up my knowledge and growing my wisdom every day, and it's fun. It's fun. I enjoy the challenge every day.
Yeah, definitely. What
do you remember about sitting on the boat? Is there anything that like stood out to you in that conversation?
I'm trying to, like, that was very fuzzy. I remember, like, we were trying to hammer out the deals of like ownership and how's it going to work? How are we going to get clients? Who's going to do what? And we kind of worked through some of that stuff. And then we talked a little bit about, like, what type of projects do we want to do? How do we want to do this? And I think that's kind of where we discussed some of the, like, let's use contractors and full-time employees and a mixture of those things, and what types of roles we would take. I think that's probably where I got stuck in the CFO role.
Yeah. How did you become the CFO of Augusto? Because you come from an engineering background. How did you become the CFO?
I think it was like the default. I always describe it as, like, they said, who wants to be CFO? And everybody else stepped back, and I wasn't paying attention. So
that's not it.
I guess I'd done the finances for Turnitopia, and then Pay It To early in those days. So I had a little bit, but not nearly the experiences I've got now that I've been doing it for Augusto. So I think it just sort of defaulted to me. I'm probably the most of the original founders. I'm probably the most detail oriented person. So that's sort of important when you're talking about numbers. So I think that's probably how.
Yeah, I saw it in you. I saw, like, because you were handling I always saw details in you, and you always like could do analysis work really, really well. And I remember sitting at the patio table looking over the lake, and I was like, Joel, listen, I've already thought all this through. I think that you've got to be our initial CFO. Like, you've got to manage all the books, the accounting and finance stuff, because you're so detail oriented. You got to grow, because you weren't trained in any of these things. You have to train yourself, and you had learned a lot through your experiences working with accountants and stuff, through these business ventures we did and legal stuff, right? So like you were in a good position, I think, to understand all that stuff, but you were still an engineer at heart and probably still are, right?
Yeah.
Although it's probably changing some days with how much work you're doing in the finance world these days.
Yes. I definitely spend more time in spreadsheets than in an IDE.
Yeah. Yep. And then, so let's tell a little bit of the Augusto story. So Augusto has grown fairly significantly over the last 4 years. From day one, we've been growing, right?
Yeah. So day one was what you and Marty full time.
Yeah.
And one or two contractors to help with some of the development. That was like late 2016.
Todd Fortier was the first contractor.
Yep. He was like, we always say he's like he's been a contractor before Augusto was Augusto.
Yep. And Todd and Marty go way back.
Yep.
And Todd's awesome. We love working with Todd. But it was like me and Marty and Todd and a couple others. And then we did a deal with Brightly. So we thought that they could help accelerate our go-to-market, which they did, but we made smart decisions there because both sides went in eyes wide open, knowing that this might not be like a marriage, made in heaven, but we helped each other progress our businesses. And then we split, but that took like a year and a half. Right. And it did help us get traction, but it like slowed our development of our own brand and thinking and positioning and stuff like that.
Right. So I think we made that official, like not like still a good relationship there, but like that split of let's become Augusto in early 2018 is when we started doing some of that stuff.
Yeah.
And then mid 2018, we'd grown a little bit. We'd kind of established ourselves. We were still working with Brightly, like on a few things. And that's when I made the jump to become full-time. So September 1st, 2018 is when I started full-time at Augusto. And I think by then we'd grown to probably 10 to 15 contractors at that time. Mm-hmm. Still just full-time employees of Augusto was just the three of us. We were waiting for Jim to be ready, which I think happened in early 2019.
It's crazy. It's happened so fast, but it seems like so long ago.
Yeah. Yep. It's hard to believe that I've been doing this full time for 2 years now.
Yeah. And like the transformation of our business in that time and the volume of work we handle these days is just exponential. It feels like,
right.
Compared to where we were at.
Yeah. So I think we'll end 2020. We've got 9 employees, full-time employees. And I think we've used 30 contractors throughout this year.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. It's pretty good. And I think it's going to continue to grow. I think it's been interesting. Let's tell a few more of the entrepreneurial stories of Augusto. Then we can go into some of these other topics. But so we having Augusto, a growing services consulting business wasn't enough. So we had to split it into multiple other businesses. So we started with one. Did we start with CrewPay first?
I'm trying to remember if CrewPay or Loft. I think Loft came first.
Loft came first. So through relationships, through Marty's relationships, he had a group of entrepreneurs down in North Carolina, Greensboro area that we're good friends with. They had some interest in starting they wanted to try a SaaS business, and they also had an idea for a name, Loft, and they turned it into a business concept that was around application support. And then that vision, those two companies, Marty and David talked a lot about, and they were really hot about doing these things. So we came along and we became partners with them and helped them accelerate these ideas. What's your recollection of that stuff, and kind of what's some of the background of CrewPay and Loft?
Yeah. So Loft really came to I recognize this when I was at Trackabout. There's a difference in developers. I see there's 2 different types of developers. So I call them makers and menders. Makers are the type that you put them in front of a blank IDE and they're thrilled, right? Give them a blank canvas and they will go to town and build you whatever you want. Whereas a mender is somebody who they get lost. They don't know what to do with blank, but give them a problem, say, hey, this is what's wrong. And here's the full stack of any place that it could be. And they will dig in and find the issue. And Augusto is definitely makers. We start fresh, we build something, and makers don't tend to want to maintain it once it's done. they'll keep adding new features, but they're not going to be the people who maintain it.
Yeah.
So Loft is much more of the menders, of the people who will go in and fix issues and support it, optimize the application to make them run smoothly. And we quickly recognized that those are two different types of people. And so Loft sort of formed of like, let's find menders that can support these applications. And then Croupe was the same group of people, but a completely different like reason for it to exist. And that was, we needed to pay our contractors. That was something that I'd struggled with from day one, is finding a good tool to pay our contractors, because they weren't on payroll. So it wasn't quite the same. There weren't a lot of great tools out there at the time. And we found one, payable.com, and they were bought by Stripe and then shut down. And so we sort of came together like, well, there's 3 or 4 different companies that are all paying contractors. Our tool that we've all been using just shut down. It's going to shut down soon. So let's build something to replace it and do it ourselves. That's kind of where Croupe came from.
Right. That one was kind of coming at it a little bit. There was a business problem there, but it wasn't, there was a lot of lessons learned, some repeat lessons learned, in Croupe, which were good reinforcements of stuff that we may not do again in the future, but we learned a lot. Through that group, we raised some money from a new fund out of North Carolina. That's part of their economic development programs down there. And learned a lot about working with investors through that process. Mm-hmm. And the legalities and all the deals and stuff, how they come together. And then Loft is still growing, still in existence. We do, Augusto hires Loft or refers customers to Loft sometimes. And then Augusto also has learned some lessons from Loft. I mean, we're definitely working more on some managed service concepts and support concepts, and like trying to level up that difference between maker and menders and support kind of personalities or system administrators. We're trying to create like a holistic offering that can cover the wide gamut of things that you need in IT and for digital product development. Because we really want, I've always said from the beginning, we want Augusto to be the team that we hire to build our digital products. Right.
Yep.
And so that tons of lessons learned there going through that. And then we did another one. We were in another one called Digital Growth Partners. And that one was all about growth. It was trying to figure out how to use growth marketing and growth hacking. And then, it's continues. That's going on. We've done a ton of more work around how to raise funds for clients and all these different things that are leading us into conversations with Michigan State and the Right Place and the state and the city, and then also some other investors, and then learning how to potentially raise a fund. And it's learning accelerated, right?
Right. Yep. Again, doing all types of things that we just never done before. Yeah.
And then at the same time, Augusto continues to grow. We've built out a pretty amazing team. So all this stuff has happened on top of Augusto, but it also is feeding back into the growth of where we're going with the Augusto digital business model.
Right. Yep. And all these businesses that we're working to help get funds through DGP, they're using them to, work with our partner companies, do their development through Augusto and all those types of things.
Yeah. And also it's given us a better perspective and bigger knowledge base to understand how to grow the business and what do we really need and what do people need when they hire us for things. Right. And it's just been a great journey, man. It's been fun to be on it with you for this long and how much it's changed and evolved, but it's still really going. It seems to me like we're still going in the direction of having a portfolio of digital products. Yep. And having businesses that support that for our clients and for ourselves.
Yeah.
What do you think? What do you think some of the lessons learned are coming from an engineer's perspective?
Yeah, I'll say one of the big lessons is the way we do our projects. I remember a specific project early in the Crow days of where we built something. We did, like I said, we had these huge technical documents that described everything. We built it exactly to spec. It took us 6 months to build it. We delivered it. The customer, the client that we were building it for, was super happy when we delivered it. And I remember talking to someone who was still on the project 6 months later. Like, hey, how'd that work out? How's that being used? Like, oh yeah, they never released it. Once they sort of talked to some of the users, it wasn't what they wanted, so they didn't use it. And at that time, my thought process was, man, they really screwed up. Like, how could they not use something? And it took me a long time to realize that it's not just them that screwed up. We screwed up because we didn't put it in front of users. We didn't insist that they look at the progress the whole way through, make sure it's exactly what they want, and start using it early. And I think at Augusto, we do that. Like, we try to release early, release often. Every single thing we do, we're putting it in front of the client. We push the client to make sure that they're putting it in front of their users who are going to use it, to make sure we're building the right thing. Because we don't want to, as I get older and I value my time more, I don't want to spend a bunch of time building something that nobody is going to use. Like, that's a waste of my time. Yeah. Like, I may still get paid and we may still get paid for that, but it's a drain to know that something you've been working on for so long just isn't going to get used, and it's a waste of your time. So getting it out in front of them and making sure that it's what they use. And a lot of times that's like when we do projects, we don't necessarily tie the customer to scope and then go, oh, you want to change your scope? You need to do change requests. We lay out, here's a general idea of what we want to do, but you're going to direct us through this project to get exactly what you want.
Yeah.
And to me, that's probably one of the biggest lessons of the way that I think we do software different than a lot of other companies is through that process.
Yeah. And I think that, like, a lot of times you think of that person as like your product owner or your product manager. It's the person that hired you. But the reality is like they definitely have a big voice in it, but their job should be to be getting information from the customer, the ultimate user, and even bringing those users to the table to use the system in the earliest stages of development. The more
before development, when you've got wireframes to say like, hey, would this even be, or you got a user experience? Is this what's going to be working for you? Because the earlier on in the process that you make changes, the cheaper it is.
Yeah. Yeah. And the more dialed in it is when it gets launched, and then the better feedback you get. So you can just keep iterating on it. Cause like software is never really done.
Right.
Like it can always be improved. So it's just a cost benefit analysis most times. So you have to and so if you want to reduce your costs, you should talk to your users more, because it'll reduce your costs and it'll create more revenue for you.
Right. I think a lot of people look at, like, if I talk to my users, they're going to give me tons of feedback and I'm going to have a ton of stuff to do. But the reason they're giving you that feedback is because they want it to work a different way. And so you don't take that. Yeah, it might cost more up front to do some of the stuff, but the long-term benefits of more users that are using the software the way they want to, you're going to get a higher revenue.
Yes. Agreed. And so, hey, what are the lessons learned coming at this Augusto thing as a product developer, as a business owner?
Yeah, I think it's sort of similar, right? Like you need to make sure that you're building something that people want. And so if you're going to work with us, like, make sure that we're building what you want. Don't let a project go on. Like, steer the ship. Make sure we're doing what you want us to do, and you're getting what you want out of it. Like, when we build our products, like, don't gold plate it. Build just the piece that you need to make it functional, get it out there, and then get people using it, get feedback, and then enhance it over time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've really oriented our processes to facilitate that. I mean, the roles, and the way we assign people to teams, it's really led by an engagement lead and a technical lead, and the client, right, who's our product manager, and we really try to status like crazy and demo like crazy, like a really rhythmic process to try to facilitate what you just described.
Yep. Yeah. And I think, like, we expect that our clients are going to be involved. Like, that product owner is going to be dedicated to work on this project and review it fairly regularly. It's not full-time dedication, but it's going to take some time. It's not hey, I threw over some specs and 6 months later, I'm going to come back and have a finished product.
Yeah, totally. And we love people who want to go through that journey with us. Like, it's fun it's the people that try to throw the ideas off the wall and they get too busy in their day job where it's more of a struggle. Whereas, like, the people that just weave it into their life and it's part of what they're developing along with the work that they're doing, those are the people that like are the longest standing clients, and their businesses are like growing like crazy because they're optimizing all these processes for either revenue creation or cost reduction, you know, and time reduction of tasks. Okay. Well, hey man, I got two more questions for you. The first one is, how many businesses do we own together? Do you even know?
I think at one point I added up, we have 9 different LLCs.
That's a lot. And I guess the last one is, what are you excited about? You know, you're on the leadership team, you're seeing vision and seeing all the numbers add up and seeing what's going on in sales. Like, what excites you about what's going on at Augusto?
Yeah, I think that the main thing that excites me is I love being able to create jobs, whether it's bringing in new contractors or hiring new people, but just that feeling of like, there's 20 people right now that are working because of the stuff that we've been doing. Mm-hmm. And I look forward to a day when I can say like, there are 100 people that are working right now because of what we're doing, or there's 500. I think you at one point laid out a big, hairy, audacious goal of 1,000 jobs that we would create from Augusto, whether that's in Augusto or at our clients or however that comes to be, but 1,000 jobs that are a result of the work we're doing. And that to me is motivational to keep going. And when, cause there's obviously things that I don't like doing sometimes, but having that goal out there and knowing that that's happening keeps you going.
Yeah. Purpose, man. It's hard to find, but when you do find it, it kind of sets everything else up, you know, it gives you reason to work and make work not as hard. Make it something you actually wake up in the morning and enjoy doing. I tell you what, I wake up in the morning every morning and I'm looking forward to the day most days, you know, like, and I like being on the journey with people I care about. And I like working with really smart people. I love having really smart, like aspirational people to work with.
Yes. It definitely makes the day easier when everybody you're talking to is highly motivated and at the same level and higher than you, right? Pulls you up and makes you want to be better. Yeah.
Hey, one of the things that we talked about recently was, this EOS process we've been implementing. And I said, like, I'm not crazy about like the fact that we're implementing a process, we have to follow a process and stuff like that. But I really do feel like we just, through that process of discovering a process to use to like organize our business, it really has framed a lot of things for us and framed people's roles. And it's creating some amazing outcomes, I feel like. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I think the process is good. Like it's given us a lot of structure. Like you said, it's defined, roles for different people and what they need to be doing, and give them a framework of where they can stretch. Because I would say as a company, we don't dictate how things are done. Like we express like, here's the outcome. We're definitely a value based. Like I don't expect butts and seats from 8 to 5, right? Like we are more like, what is the value that you've produced? And is that what we want? And we kind of define like, this is what we want you to do. But within that, we want you to define it. And I think EOS has given us a structure around to say like, this is your domain as whatever spot you are on the accountability chart. This is your domain. These are your responsibilities and you do it that way. And it's really given a structure for meetings too, right?
Yeah. I feel like that's huge. The different meeting templates have been super helpful, and they were tough to get into those rhythms, but now that we're in them, they're so natural and they're so much better, I feel like.
Right. And a lot of that is just so like the beginning of a lot of the meetings are like, let's get a pulse on either the business as a whole or this particular, operations. Like, what is the pulse? What is the scorecard essentially that tells us, are we in the right frame of mind? That then sets the tone for the rest of the meeting as you say like, hey, we're on the right track. So we don't have hard issues to solve this week, or this particular thing is off. So let's do something about that. Mm-hmm. It really does help frame some of that.
Yeah. And then what's your perspective on the things that are happening around sales and marketing? Because that's been a lot of learning and journey there to get to even where we're at. And I do believe there's a big future ahead of us there. But what's been your perspective from your seat?
It's been exciting to watch. Like we've got our first salesperson, like full-time salesperson in the role. So we're finally getting to a point. Like our goal was always like, hey, we need to get to a point where we're getting sales that aren't coming from the founding team. And we're getting to that point this year. And it's exciting to see. I've all along, like up until recently, I've sort of been of the mind like, well, sales and marketing isn't really my responsibility. I'm no good at it, so I'm going to ignore it. But this year I've gotten a lot more involved, and it's good to see like the work that Michael's been doing with the team and organizing team and the positioning that we've done. It's been a lot of hard work and a struggle to get here, but I'm really excited to see where we're going because I'm starting to see all the pieces start to fall in place.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm really excited about that too, man. Really thankful for the people that we have on that side of our business. It's been interesting because it's so much bigger than I realized. I feel like all of these domains, if you go into sales and marketing, or you go into operations and engineering, or you go into like finance and administration, it's so much bigger than you realize,
Right.
so many specialties.
Yeah, it's like I still remember, and I'm going to pick on you a little bit here. I still remember way back in the Crow days, you're like, let's make a change. It's just a small change in the database. It's a 5-second change. That was like your favorite line. It's a 5-second change. And then 2 days later, we were done with it. Right. I feel like a lot of these things are like that, right? Like from the outside, it feels like it's just a little thing you have to take care of. You just have to enter some numbers into QuickBooks and you'll be done. But it's a lot bigger than that when you start to peel away the layers of the onion.
And just the thinking and the concepts that grow out of all that foundational stuff. It's just vast. I just look at sales and marketing. It always seemed like, oh, well, we just need a sales and marketing person. Well, the reality is now we have a sales and marketing director, and we have a business development director, and we have business development reps, and we have a marketing coordinator, and we have marketing specialties like design and copywriting and digital, and it just goes on and on. And then we have strategic partnerships, and Jim's been taking on that role and got us to our first, we're now an AWS Select partner, which took a lot of work, but also a lot of learning. And I think there's a big future there for us. So it's just fun, man. I love being on the journey with this team, and I really am enjoying it. I'm enjoying growing with you all these years, and watching both of us grow has been like really rewarding in my life. So I just wanted to say thanks.
Thank you. I appreciate you bringing me along with you. It's been a great time. Like it's hard to imagine going back and working for someone else at this point.
Yeah, I agree, man. I feel like we're on this path for life.
Yeah.
Well, Joel, thanks very much for being on the Augusto Digital Insights show. And I look forward to working with you for many years in the future.
Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Hey, thanks for listening to the Augusto Digital Insights podcast. Augusto is a custom software design and development company. If we can help you on your next project, or you just want to say hello, contact me today by calling 616-427-1914 or visit www.augustodigital.com. Remember, you can always find this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Google, and YouTube.